Oliver, as you can see, was crazy about soccer.
Oliver's dad shows me his room
He adored Harry Potter.
with a mix of pride
He was totally fearless in goal.
and pain.
It's extremely difficult.
Oliver was just 12 years old when his parents took him to the hospital for headaches.
Or diagnosed that he had AML leukemia.
Just 3 days after the diagnosis, Oliver's young life was coming to a terrifying end.
And his last words were, "I'm not going to recover, I'm going to die, I'm going to die."
Oliver took his last breath in a hospital bed, a world away from the room where now only memories remain.
He was just an immensely loving boy.
Oliver's family found out they were not alone when they came across the results of a study conducted by a statistical researcher, Dr. Raed Amin of the University of West Florida.
It showed that for certain types of pediatric cancers, the rates were elevated mainly south of Lake Okeechobee.
His work pointed to clusters of child cancer cases. Intrigued by Dr. Amin's findings, 4 other statistical research teams conducted their own independent studies, all of which were then evaluated in this 6th study by an internationally renowned statistical researcher at Emory University, Dr. Lance Waller.
There were 2 areas of the state that showed up as having unusual or higher than expected rates of childhood cancer. These are ones that showed up across the 5 studies in varying ways. One is west of the Everglades.
And he says the other one is in Miami-Dade County, the same county where Oliver lived and died.
We believe that the state has a duty, first of all, to inform people of this.
But he and others, like environmentalist Alan Farago, tell me the state is doing just the opposite.
Well, so far the governor of Florida has been silent.
Why is this happening?
Well, I think the state is being silent because it knows there's a tremendous potential for public upset and outcry if cancer clusters are identified.
Dr. Amin first shared the research with the State Department of Health in 2010. And he says the state called for cooperation going forward.
It was agreed to that. This was what was said at the meeting. That's why don't we all work together?
But he says that's not what happened after he gave the state his data.
And they promised they would send us what they had, but they never sent us data.
Oliver's dad says the state is making it difficult to even access the data.
We learned that attempts have been made to get that data and that basically they've been stymied.
The state is in a state of denial.
Do you see this as a cover-up?
I do think that there's a cover-up. I think that the state has been less than honest in dealing with these very serious conclusions by the nation's leading statistical association.
The American Statistical Association, or ASA, has not only published the studies, it sent out this press release with this headline that reads, "Higher than expected pediatric cancer rates identified in 2 Florida areas." The ASA has also featured the topic at one of its national meetings.
What was the entire session was on Florida pediatric cancers. And do you know how many questions there were in that session by the audience about what was the response of the Department of Health to the ASA? And the organizers had to say, we're sorry to say, there has been no response.
This is Patrick Nolan calling from Fox 4 News in Fort Myers.
When I reached out to the Florida Department of Health in Tallahassee
About these 5 studies identifying pediatric cancer clusters in the southern part of the state,
the department responded with this email that did not mention the cluster researchers identified west of the Everglades. It did mention the other area where researchers pointed to a cluster, Miami-Dade County, saying, quote, "The department is not aware of any current cancer cluster concerns in Miami-Dade County communities and is, for this reason, not involved in any cancer cluster investigations in Miami-Dade." The health department also said, quote, "There does not seem to be a higher rate of select pediatric cancers in Miami-Dade compared to the state of Florida." Those statements from the Florida Department of Health have raised eyebrows among the independent researchers, including Duke University's Dr. David Banks, who published the studies pointing to child cancer clusters in southern Florida.
There does seem to be a potential problem there. To not pursue investigation seems delinquent.
Oliver's dad agrees and can't help but wonder,
Why? What is our political leadership doing to address this?
Address the risk, he says, to protect other Florida children just like his.
He was 12 years old, and it came from absolutely out of the blue.